In the quiet of a universe yet unnamed, where the stars whispered their secrets in silver and shadow, a boy once sat beneath an apple tree. He did not know that the weight of curiosity, like the fruit poised above him, would fall and change the way humanity would see the world. The air around him was still, almost sacred, and in that silence, the faint pulse of understanding began to stir. It is in such quiet moments, soft as a sigh, that revolutions of thought are born. And so, as the evening sky wrapped the fields in a gentle indigo, his journey of discovery began, unnoticed by the world but destined to illuminate it forever. If these words carry you closer to sleep, let this channel stay by your side too, a gentle companion as we drift through history's softest truths. The air in Lincolnshire was always gentle, carrying the scent of grass and the faint sweetness of orchards just beginning to turn gold under the autumn sun. It was here, amid the slow rhythm of farm life and the quiet murmur of village paths, that a boy named Isaac Newton first felt the stirrings of wonder. His world was small yet boundless. A single field could hold an entire universe if one looked closely enough. He would lie beneath apple trees for hours, eyes tracing the curve of leaves, watching the shadows stretch and bend across the soft earth. The apples above him swayed gently in the wind, as if teasing him, promising secrets if he could only understand their fall. And when one finally let go, plopping softly into the grass, something deep inside him whispered that there was a reason beyond mere gravity, a subtle rhythm connecting the ground, the fruit, and the sky. At home, the world was just as vivid, though quieter, with the flickering glow of candlelight painting warmth across wooden walls. Books were rare treasures, but even a few pages could awaken dreams far larger than the tiny room that held him. Newton read slowly, tasting every word, allowing ideas to settle in his mind like seeds in fertile soil. The rhythms of life, morning chores, the hum of distant animals, the soft creak of doors, became the backdrop to a mind that never stopped exploring. He noticed patterns others ignored. The way sunlight filtered through branches, the way water pooled in small hollows after a rain, the way the moon rose quietly each night, tracing the same path across an endless sky. Every motion, every change felt deliberate, as if the universe itself were offering him tiny gifts of understanding, waiting for him to recognize them. In those fields, alone and observant, Isaac learned patience. Not the forced patience of waiting, but the gentle, natural patience of one who watches closely and listens deeply. He did not rush. He did not demand. Instead, he allowed the world to reveal itself slowly, in soft murmurs, in quiet nudges. He counted petals on flowers, traced the spirals in pine cones, and imagined the invisible threads that might connect each element to the next. And though he was just a boy, his mind reached far beyond the fences and hedgerows, across rivers and hills, into realms of thought and possibility that few around him could even glimpse. Yet curiosity was not always met with understanding. Teachers and neighbors often saw him as distracted, lost in daydreams, or staring too long at the sky. "Why do you waste your time on such things?" they would ask, with the patient frustration of those who cannot yet see what he saw. But Isaac never minded. He learned to find solace in quiet observation, to trust the gentle insistence of his own mind. For in those moments, beneath the sway of an apple tree or the silver glow of moonlight on a still pond, he felt a rhythm to the world that made everything make sense, if only he could listen closely enough. There were days when the clouds hung heavy, and the fields smelled of rain and damp earth. On those days, he would sit indoors, sketching, calculating, imagining. He drew circles and arcs, mapping invisible forces with a careful hand, not yet knowing that these sketches were the earliest murmurs of laws that would one day govern planets and tides. Every pencil mark, every small measurement, was a whisper of insight, a soft promise that the universe, so vast and unknowable to others, could be understood with patience, thought, and quiet reflection. And yet, even in these solitary moments, Isaac felt connection. The rustle of leaves, the distant crow of a bird, the gentle sway of the branches above him. They all seemed to speak in the same language he was learning to read. Gravity was not a harsh master, nor motion a cruel constraint. They were melodies in the quiet music of nature, and he, a careful listener, began to hear their tune. The seed of understanding was planted, small and fragile, yet it would grow strong, reaching out into a life that would eventually illuminate the cosmos. Even as night fell, and the sky deepened into shades of indigo and violet, the orchard remained alive with subtle energy. Stars blinked into existence one by one, and Newton would lie on the cool grass, eyes tracing their soft shimmer. He imagined invisible forces pulling on the world, bending the heavens in silence, shaping the dance of planets and comets. It was a vision too vast for his small hands to touch, yet intimate enough to fill his mind with awe. In the hush of evening, with the scent of earth and leaves around him, Isaac began to understand that curiosity was not merely a desire to know, but a gentle companion that could guide one toward truths far larger than the self. And so, beneath the apple tree, in the quiet of a Lincolnshire afternoon fading into night, a boy learned patience, observation, and the soft, persistent joy of discovery. Each falling apple, each whispering leaf, each shimmer of starlight became part of a growing understanding, a gentle thread weaving him closer to the infinite, to the laws that would one day explain the motion of the world. The first steps of genius are often silent, delicate, and unseen, yet they carry the weight of destiny in the most subtle, beautiful ways. As the seasons shifted, the fields of Lincolnshire became a living classroom for young Isaac. Winter's frost would lace the grass with delicate patterns, each crystalline curve a miniature universe of symmetry and wonder. He would kneel in the cold, tracing the intricate designs with careful fingers, imagining invisible forces shaping the world with quiet precision. To him, every leaf, every snowflake, every ripple in a stream told a story, one that whispered softly to those willing to listen. It was not merely observation. It was communion with nature itself, a gentle dialogue between the mind of a boy and the vast, subtle rhythms of the world around him. Inside the small, candlelit house, Isaac's thoughts often wandered beyond the familiar walls. He imagined distant stars, the slow arcs of the moon, and the secret paths that might guide a falling apple or a rolling stone. Numbers and shapes became companions, their silent logic unfolding like a quiet song only he could hear. When others saw only trees or rocks, he saw patterns, sequences, invisible strings weaving together the fabric of reality. His imagination was patient and gentle, not restless or hurried, and it was this patience that allowed him to perceive connections invisible to those around him. Though the world outside moved slowly, Isaac's mind moved in quiet leaps. He wondered about motion and rest, cause and effect, how the small and the vast could follow the same invisible rules. Questions that might have seemed simple. Why an apple fell, why a ball rolled down a hill, why the moon hung suspended in the night sky, were to him portals to understanding the universe. And as he asked, he began to sketch, to calculate, to imagine, slowly building a foundation of insight that would carry him far beyond the boundaries of village life. There were moments when the weight of solitude pressed upon him, yet it was never loneliness that he felt. The quietude became a companion, the gentle rhythm of daily life a soft cradle for thought. In the warmth of the hearth, with the wind sighing outside, Isaac would bend over his small desk, drawing spirals, arcs, and circles. Each curve, each line, was a question given form, a tentative reach toward the invisible rules that guided motion, force, and balance. His hand moved deliberately, carefully, like a musician tracing notes across a page, coaxing a hidden melody into the light of understanding. Sometimes, the boy would venture further into the fields, carrying a small notebook or a piece of chalk to mark observations on stone or soil. He would measure the angles of branches, the trajectory of rolling stones, the time it took for water to trickle from one puddle to another. To anyone else, it might have seemed like play or idle curiosity, but to Isaac, it was the first careful mapping of a universe whose rules were waiting to be discovered. Even the simplest phenomena, a falling leaf, the path of a bird, were lessons, soft hints of the order woven quietly beneath the surface of the world. Isaac's mother, patient and gentle, sometimes watched him from a distance. She noticed the intensity with which he observed, the way his eyes followed the unseen. She could not know the depths he reached in those silent moments, nor could she imagine that the quiet boy beneath her roof would one day illuminate the forces that govern the heavens. Still, she gave him space, trusting in the rhythm of his thoughts, allowing the orchard, the fields, and the candlelit corners of their home to be his private universe. There were nights when the moon rose, bathing the earth in soft silver light, and Isaac would lie beneath the stars, arms folded behind his head, tracing constellations and imagining the invisible threads that connected them. Gravity, he did not yet name it, but he felt its whisper, a soft insistence binding earth and sky, guiding falling objects, holding the moon in its quiet path. Each observation was a gentle lesson, each question a seed, planting the beginnings of insights that would one day grow into laws understood across centuries. Even the village itself seemed to conspire in his education. The slow rhythm of life, the quiet footsteps on dirt paths, the soft crowing of roosters at dawn, the hush of evening as lamps glimmered behind windows, all became part of the tapestry of observation. The world was alive in ways subtle and profound, and Isaac's mind, tender and attentive, began to notice the patterns, the delicate connections, the silent music that bound all things together. And so, as another day faded into the gentle embrace of night, Isaac Newton remained beneath the apple tree, a boy with a mind reaching quietly toward the infinite. Each leaf that trembled, each fruit that fell, each star that shimmered in the sky above was a whisper of the universe's secrets. And though the world around him slept, he listened. He waited. He imagined. And in that quiet, patient attention, the first soft stirrings of genius took root, ready to grow into insights that would one day illuminate the heavens and the earth alike. The orchard was still, and the boy's journey was only beginning. Even as he drifted toward sleep, the universe seemed to lean closer, soft and watchful, sharing fragments of its eternal rhythm with the mind of a boy who would one day change the world forever. The first steps into a schoolroom were like entering a new universe for young Isaac. The walls, lined with rough wooden benches and the faint scent of chalk and parchment, seemed ordinary to others. Yet to him they were the threshold of discovery. He noticed everything. The rhythm of the teacher's voice, the way sunlight filtered through the small windows, the quiet symmetry of letters carefully traced on paper. Learning became a soft rhythm, like the ebb and flow of a stream, carrying him forward gently, yet insistently, toward understanding that stretched far beyond the room's walls. Numbers, letters, and equations were no longer mere symbols. They became companions, each one humming with the potential to reveal hidden truths. Arithmetic exercises and simple calculations felt like puzzles whispered by the universe, small keys to unlocking patterns that shaped the world. Newton's mind moved quietly through them, patient and deliberate, noting connections others might overlook. Each problem solved, each calculation completed, was a soft step deeper into a landscape of thought as vast and serene as the fields and orchards of his childhood. Books, scarce though they were, became windows into worlds he had only glimpsed in imagination. Tales of distant lands, of stars and comets, of philosophers and mathematicians, stirred a gentle fire of curiosity. He would linger over sentences, rereading them, tracing the logic slowly, letting ideas settle in the quiet corners of his mind. Knowledge, to him, was not a duty or a task. It was a gentle companion, a whisper of understanding that grew stronger the more he listened. Even the mundane lessons held fascination. Observing the trajectory of a thrown ball, measuring the shadow of a tree at midday, or noting the flow of water in a puddle, he began to sense a delicate harmony underlying the apparent chaos of everyday life. To the teacher, these observations might seem trivial, but Isaac's mind was mapping invisible threads, the subtle forces that connected one thing to another, silently and persistently. In these small, quiet acts, he was learning not just to see the world, but to feel it, to sense the rhythm that guided all motion, all matter. There were classmates, of course, but Newton often felt apart from them, not in loneliness, but in gentle focus. While others played or spoke loudly, he lingered on the margins of thought, attentive to the patterns invisible to most. He noticed how the light fell across the floor, how a pen stroke curved in an elegant arc, how a sound lingered in a room. All of it seemed interconnected, a subtle dance of cause and effect, of motion and response. His curiosity was patient and soft, never demanding, yet unwavering. At home, evenings were spent with quiet reflection. The candle's glow seemed to draw the world inward, illuminating the delicate sketches he made in notebooks, the arcs of falling objects, the beginnings of calculations that would one day define the laws of motion. He often paused, gazing through windows at the orchard bathed in moonlight, imagining invisible lines stretching from earth to sky, from the apple at his feet to the stars above. He did not yet have the words to describe these thoughts, but in the soft intimacy of night, he began to feel the principles that would later become the foundation of modern science. Occasionally, moments of frustration would creep in. Some lessons felt slow, some explanations incomplete. Yet even these pauses became part of the rhythm of learning. In quiet reflection, Newton would return to the problem, turning it over in his mind like a smooth stone in a gentle stream. Patience and observation guided him as much as instruction, and in this careful attention, the seeds of understanding deepened, soft and persistent, ready to grow when the time was right. Even outside, nature continued to teach. Frost on windows revealed patterns of symmetry. The moon's reflection in puddles hinted at hidden harmonies, and the gentle sway of trees whispered of forces unseen. Each lesson, whether learned from a teacher or from the world itself, added a soft layer to the tapestry of his mind. Knowledge became not a rigid accumulation of facts, but a gentle unfolding, a delicate alignment of curiosity, observation, and imagination. And so, Isaac Newton moved through his early years, each day a quiet chapter in a story of patient discovery. The orchard, the classroom, the candlelit corners of his home, they all blended into a seamless rhythm, a gentle cadence of learning and reflection. Every observation, every question, every small calculation was a note in the soft, ongoing music of understanding that would one day illuminate the world. As night fell once more and stars shimmered softly above Lincolnshire, Isaac's young mind remained attentive, listening to the subtle harmonies that guided the earth and sky. The rhythm of learning had become natural, as gentle as the wind through the trees, as soft as the falling of an apple, yet profound enough to touch the very fabric of reality. And in this quiet attentiveness, the first true murmurs of genius began to settle, ready to awaken in ways that would forever change humanity's understanding of the universe. As Isaac grew, the world around him began to expand in quiet, intricate ways. The orchards of Lincolnshire, the soft fields, and the small village paths were no longer just familiar spaces. They had become laboratories of thought, alive with patterns and forces waiting to be understood. Each season brought new observations, the frost tracing delicate filigree across the pond, the river bending gently around stones, the clouds drifting across the sky in slow, deliberate arcs. The boy's mind absorbed it all, patient and attentive, as though the world itself were speaking to him in whispers meant only for those who would listen closely. Schoolwork continued, but now a subtle shift had begun. Newton's curiosity, always quiet yet persistent, reached beyond the routine exercises and lessons. He began to ask questions not just of numbers or letters, but of the very world itself. Why did the moon move as it did? Why did objects fall to the ground? How could invisible forces shape the motion of planets and tides, yet remain unseen to the eye? These were not questions of idle fancy. They were gentle probes into the structure of reality, soft explorations that would one day ripple across centuries. Books remained his companions, their pages a bridge to minds that had walked before him, thinkers who had glimpsed the edges of understanding. He read slowly, allowing sentences to sink in, letting ideas settle like soft rain into fertile soil. Geometry, arithmetic, the observations of astronomers long gone. They were threads that Isaac began to weave together, each one a subtle hint of connections waiting to be revealed. In the quiet of candlelight, with shadows flickering on walls, he traced arcs and angles on paper, imagining invisible forces tugging at the world, linking earth to sky, stone to apple, moon to ocean. Yet learning was not confined to ink and paper. Nature continued to be his patient teacher. He would watch as water spiraled gently down a stream, noticing the way eddies formed and dissipated, how currents curved in soft, predictable ways. The branches of a tree bending in the wind, the flight of birds as they curved against the sky, the rhythm of tides. Each observation added a layer to the soft architecture of understanding growing within him. The world was not chaotic, he began to see. It was ordered, harmonious, following invisible rules as gentle as they were profound. There were moments of quiet solitude, when even the village seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the boy and his thoughts. In these hours, Isaac began to experiment. Small objects were rolled, dropped, and measured. Angles were traced, distances calculated. Simple machines, levers, pulleys, and inclined planes became tools of exploration. His hands moved deliberately, carefully, guided by a mind learning to translate observation into understanding. Each experiment was a soft step into the invisible architecture of the universe, a gentle discovery that one could touch, measure, and comprehend what had once seemed beyond reach. Even the rhythms of daily life became part of his education. The ticking of clocks, the sway of trees, the patterns of shadows cast by the sun, they all contributed to his subtle understanding of motion and time. Learning was no longer a series of lessons imposed from outside. It was a living, breathing dialogue with the universe itself. His mind, patient and reflective, absorbed these rhythms, translating them into the quiet architecture of insight that would one day become the foundation of the laws governing motion and gravity. Friends and family watched the boy with a mix of admiration and gentle bewilderment. While others played or spoke, Isaac lingered in thought, tracing invisible patterns in the air, sketching arcs and curves on paper, measuring the small forces that shaped the familiar world around him. It was not a hurried brilliance, but a patient and deliberate unfolding, like the slow turning of the seasons or the gentle orbit of the moon. Every observation, every small experiment, every quiet calculation became part of the soft, enduring pattern of understanding, as natural as breathing and as inevitable as night following day. Evenings were his sanctuary. The soft glow of candlelight illuminated sketches, calculations, and diagrams, while outside, the orchard and fields whispered in the cool night air. Stars began to the sky, each one a quiet spark of wonder, each one a thread in the soft tapestry of cosmic rhythm. Isaac traced their movements, imagining invisible lines of force, understanding the pull that guided the earth and the moon, the oceans and the tides. Though still young, he began to sense the elegant harmony binding all things together, a silent music of the cosmos that only those patient enough to listen could ever hope to perceive. And so, the adolescence of Isaac Newton was a gentle unfolding of curiosity into structured thought, imagination into disciplined observation, questions into subtle experiments. The quiet boy beneath the apple tree had grown into a young mind capable of tracing the invisible lines that shaped the heavens and the earth alike. Each discovery, no matter how small, was a soft echo of the genius that would one day illuminate the world, not with noise or spectacle, but with the gentle, enduring clarity of understanding. As night wrapped the fields in its quiet embrace, and the stars shimmered softly above Lincolnshire, Isaac's mind remained attentive, patient, and alive. Each movement of the apple, each pattern in the frost, each distant shimmer in the sky, whispered secrets of a universe waiting to be understood. And in that gentle attentiveness, the first true murmurs of genius were quietly taking shape, ready to blossom into a life that would forever change the way humanity sees the world. As the years unfurled, Isaac Newton's mind became a quiet force of gravity itself, pulling ideas, questions, and observations toward clarity. The boy beneath the apple tree had grown into a young man, yet the orchard still called to him in the hush of early morning or the fading light of evening. Here, in the gentle embrace of familiar trees, he continued to listen to the wind through branches, the slow arc of clouds, and the weight of apples falling to the earth. Every movement, however small, seemed to speak a secret language, one he was learning to translate with care and patience. Schooling had deepened his understanding, and by now he moved comfortably between books, experiments, and reflection. Mathematical texts, once mysterious and distant, now seemed like whispers of a universe, guiding him toward patterns and laws that had remained hidden from others. Geometry became a language of elegance, tracing the shapes of planets and comets, the curvature of orbits, the invisible arcs of forces. Calculations were no longer exercises, they were gentle explorations, a soft dialogue between mind and nature. Each problem solved was a note in the quiet music of understanding, a melody that would one day resonate far beyond Lincolnshire. In solitude, Isaac began to experiment more deliberately. Small weights rolled down inclined planes, pendulums swung in rhythmic arcs, water flowed and rippled in gentle, measured currents. Each motion, each cause and effect, was observed with meticulous care. Yet even in his method, there was a tenderness, a soft awareness of the harmony underpinning the universe. These experiments were not rushed. They were gentle explorations, as patient and deliberate as a painter tracing fine lines, as rhythmic as the tides he sought to understand. Evenings became a sacred time of reflection. Candlelight flickered across pages filled with sketches, calculations, and musings. Newton would gaze through windows at the orchard bathed in silver moonlight, imagining invisible forces connecting every object, every motion, every star. Gravity was no longer a simple curiosity. It was a quiet thread, weaving the universe together, binding apple to earth, moon to ocean, planets to sun. He could sense it more than see it, feel its gentle pull in the rhythm of everyday life. And yet, it was not abstract. It was intimate, soft, and immediate, like the hush of night settling over familiar fields. His notebooks, once small and tentative, now held ideas that reached far beyond his years. Calculations began to coalesce into patterns. Observations hinted at universal laws. The motion of planets, the fall of objects, the curvature of paths, all began to reveal themselves as part of a single, elegant design. Newton's mind moved gently through these discoveries, letting understanding unfold like a flower in early spring. Insight was not forced. It arrived quietly, patiently, softly, as the orchard had taught him to watch and wait. Friends and neighbors continued to notice the boy-turned young man, though their understanding of his work remained limited. He seemed distant at times, not absent, but absorbed in questions that could not yet be spoken aloud. Even so, there was a calm warmth to his focus, a reflective patience that drew the attention of those who truly watched. Isaac's world was one of observation and quiet exploration, and though the broader world had yet to recognize it, the foundations of genius were being laid with deliberate, loving care. And yet, alongside this quiet pursuit of understanding, there was an awakening of ambition. Not loud or restless, but soft, persistent, a gentle recognition that the truths he glimpsed might illuminate the world beyond his orchard. Each night, as stars shimmered above, he traced their paths in his mind, imagining forces that could reach across vast distances, that could explain not only apples and stones, but the motion of planets and tides, the hidden music of the cosmos. It was a vision both intimate and infinite, a meditation on the subtle harmony of all things. By the end of his teenage years, Isaac Newton had become both observer and participant in the grand orchestra of the universe. His mind, quiet yet relentless, had begun to map invisible forces, to measure the unmeasurable, to touch the eternal with soft, deliberate thought. He had learned to see patterns, to trace connections, to hear the whisper of natural laws in the gentle movements of everyday life. And though the orchard, the classroom, and the candlelit nights were familiar, they had guided him toward the extraordinary, toward insights that would one day change the world forever. As night fell once more over Lincolnshire, the apple tree stood in soft silhouette, a silent witness to the boy who had become a mind capable of seeing the invisible. Stars blinked faintly in the velvet sky, each one a quiet promise of discovery, each one a reminder that the universe speaks to those who listen with patience and care. And in the gentle attentiveness of Isaac Newton, the first true murmurs of genius had taken root, ready to grow into the quiet brilliance that would illuminate humanity's understanding of the world. The halls of Cambridge University opened before Isaac Newton like a new and delicate world, both familiar and entirely strange. The wooden floors creaked softly beneath his feet, the stone walls seemed to hold centuries of whispers, and the quiet rhythm of scholarly life wrapped around him like a gentle cloak. He walked slowly at first, letting the air of ancient knowledge settle into his mind, allowing the subtle cadence of ideas to echo softly against the chambers of his own thoughts. Here, the universe seemed vast yet intimate, waiting to be explored with patient attention and careful observation. The lectures, though structured and formal, were a soft invitation rather than a rigid command. Professors spoke of mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy, and while many students absorbed only the words, Isaac listened for the spaces between them, the quiet implications that hinted at truths unseen. Equations on chalkboards became threads connecting motion, force, and gravity, and he traced them gently in his mind, like a finger across the strings of a delicate instrument. Each calculation, each theorem, was not a mere exercise, but a whisper of the hidden harmony of the world, a melody that his attentive mind began to understand in soft, deliberate tones. At night, when the university fell into silence and candlelight flickered against the stone, Isaac would return to his small chamber. He sketched or measured, imagining the invisible forces guiding objects both near and far. He traced the arc of falling apples in his mind, recalling the orchard of his youth, and began to think of the moon, the tides, and the distant planets, all moving in silent, predictable rhythm. The principles that had once seemed small and local, gravity, motion, cause, and effect, now began to stretch into a universal language, subtle and unyielding, connecting the smallest stone to the largest star. Cambridge offered not just books and lectures, but the company of other minds, though few shared his intensity of focus. Isaac often preferred the quiet companionship of observation over conversation, the gentle dialogue with numbers and nature over the hurried chatter of peers. Yet in this solitude, he was not alone. Every experiment, every calculation, every careful sketch brought him closer to the invisible structure of the universe. He learned that patience was not merely waiting, but listening, and that understanding comes not in loud revelations, but in the soft, persistent unraveling of hidden truths. He began to formalize ideas that had lingered since his youth: motion, force, and gravity. Objects did not fall randomly. They were pulled by invisible threads, subtle and relentless. Planets did not wander aimlessly. Their paths were curved by forces both delicate and profound. Newton's mind traced these lines with the patience of a watchmaker, gentle yet precise, careful to note every pattern, every subtle effect, every hint of symmetry. Each insight was a quiet triumph, a soft illumination, expanding the boundaries of understanding without fanfare, yet with profound and lasting impact. Cambridge nights were long and still, the dormitory quiet except for the occasional rustle of paper or the muted whisper of a distant student. In this hush, Isaac's imagination soared. He traced the parabolic arc of a thrown stone, measured the descent of water from a pitcher, and imagined the invisible pull that held the moon in its orbit. His chamber became both sanctuary and laboratory, a space where the ordinary world revealed extraordinary truths to one patient, attentive mind. Candlelight cast shadows across the pages of calculations, dancing softly, as though acknowledging the silent work unfolding beneath its glow. Even the simplest observations became profound. The apple falling, the swing of a pendulum, the reflection of moonlight on a pond. They were not trivial. They were invitations to understanding, gentle hints of laws that connected the smallest detail to the vast expanse of the cosmos. Newton's mind, disciplined yet tender, learned to see these connections, to trace them carefully, and to measure them with soft, deliberate care. The universe was no longer distant. It was intimate, alive, and speaking directly to a mind willing to listen. And so, in the quiet of Cambridge, Isaac Newton began to bridge the worlds of imagination and formal science. The boy who had observed falling apples and moonlit orchards now traced the invisible arcs that bound planets, stones, and tides together. He was patient, deliberate, and gentle in his pursuit, understanding that true insight comes slowly, like dawn spreading across the horizon. Each discovery, each calculation, each quiet reflection was a soft note in the symphony of understanding that would one day illuminate humanity's grasp of motion, gravity, and the very rhythm of the universe itself. As the night deepened over Cambridge, and the stars above seemed to twinkle in silent approval, Isaac Newton remained at his desk, absorbed in careful observation and quiet calculation. The universe had begun to reveal its language to him, soft and intricate, patient and eternal. And in the gentle attentiveness of his mind, the first true murmurs of the discoveries that would change the world had taken root, ready to blossom into insight that would illuminate not just a boy beneath an apple tree, but all of humanity. Spring had arrived in Cambridge, soft and tender, and with it came a sense of quiet possibility. Isaac Newton's mind, long attuned to the gentle rhythms of nature, now sought patterns not only in the orchards and streams of his youth, but in the broader cosmos. He traced the motion of pendulums, studied the arcs of falling objects, and imagined the invisible hands guiding planets along their silent paths. Each observation, each experiment, was a delicate conversation with the universe, soft yet insistent, revealing the harmony underlying every movement. It was during these quiet days and long, still nights that the principles now known as Newton's laws began to take form. Motion was not chaotic, but orderly, he realized. Every action carried a response, every force a consequence. He traced the paths of objects with care, measuring their descent, timing their movement, and observing the gentle pull that brought them to rest. There was patience in every calculation, tenderness in every observation, a reflective attention that allowed him to uncover patterns invisible to most. What others dismissed as simple or ordinary, the swing of a pendulum, a ball rolling down a slope, the orbit of the moon, revealed itself as a profound symmetry, soft and enduring. Books and manuscripts became his companions once more, though now they were guides rather than teachers. He absorbed the ideas of Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler, not merely as history, but as whispers to be interpreted as hints of the unseen connections binding the universe. Their observations gave form to his imagination. Their calculations fed his patience. And in the hush of his chamber, amid candlelight and scattered sketches, Newton began to synthesize his insights, each one a soft step toward understanding the motion of objects near and far, on earth and in the heavens. Even nature itself seemed to encourage him. A falling apple, remembered from the orchard of his youth, returned to him not as a simple fruit, but as a messenger of the forces that govern all things. He watched rivers meander, shadows stretch, and tides rise and fall, and in each phenomenon he sensed the invisible laws guiding them. Gravity was not an abstract idea. It was a tender, persistent force, quietly shaping the world, binding all things together. Each measurement, each careful calculation, was a gentle reaching toward clarity, an attempt to capture in thought the language of the cosmos itself. Cambridge provided both solitude and the framework for focus. The young scholar spent hours alone, candlelight flickering against parchment, as he sketched, calculated, and imagined. His experiments grew increasingly intricate, weights on inclined planes, pendulums tracing perfect arcs, comets traced against the night sky. Each observation, each repeated trial, was a meditation, a soft and deliberate unfolding of understanding. He learned that insight arrives slowly, in whispers rather than shouts, and that patience is as essential to discovery as curiosity itself. There were moments of quiet triumph, when calculations confirmed patterns he had long intuited, or when an observation aligned perfectly with his theory. Isaac felt not exhilaration in the loud sense, but a serene and profound joy. It was as though the universe had leaned closer, acknowledging the patient attentiveness of a mind tuned to its rhythm. Each small success strengthened his understanding, deepened his resolve, and quietly illuminated the path ahead. Even the ordinary world became extraordinary in his attention. Apples, stones, streams, shadows, and stars. Every detail was part of a vast, invisible design, waiting for careful observation to reveal its pattern. Newton's mind was gentle yet rigorous, weaving these elements into a coherent understanding of motion, force, and gravity. The universe revealed itself not through spectacle, but through patience, reflection, and quiet listening, and he had learned to hear its soft, eternal song. And so, the young scholar's first breakthroughs began to crystallize. The motions of falling bodies, the gentle pull of gravity, the predictable paths of planets, all were glimpsed through patient observation, careful calculation, and reflective imagination. Each insight, though emerging softly, carried within it the seed of a revolution that would forever change how humanity understood the world. As night deepened over Cambridge, and the stars shimmered softly above, Isaac Newton remained at his desk, absorbed in the quiet labor of discovery. Candlelight danced across sketches and calculations, illuminating the careful work of a mind attuned to the gentle music of the universe. And in that attentive, serene focus, the first true murmurs of Newton's enduring genius had fully awakened, ready to unfold into the insights that would shape the laws of motion, gravity, and the rhythm of all things for centuries to come. The quiet days and candlelit nights of Cambridge had transformed the boy beneath the apple tree into a mind quietly capable of seeing the invisible. Isaac Newton had begun to uncover patterns that bound the world together, a soft harmony underlying motion, gravity, and the paths of planets across the sky. What had begun as simple curiosity, the gentle observation of a falling apple, the sway of a tree branch, the shimmer of stars, now unfolded into principles that would illuminate the universe itself. Yet, even as these ideas took shape, there was no fanfare, no clamor. Only quiet reflection, patient observation, and a tender sense of wonder accompanied each discovery. Newton's first breakthroughs were small but profound. The motions of objects, the arcs of pendulums, the trajectories of falling stones, all whispered the same truth. The universe operates according to laws, subtle and unyielding, gentle yet eternal. These patterns were not imposed from outside, but discovered through careful listening, through the patient attention of a mind attuned to both the seen and unseen. He had learned to perceive the invisible threads that connect earth to sky, stone to apple, moon to ocean, and in this perception lay the quiet power of his genius. Yet even as he traced these laws, Isaac remained humble before the vastness of the cosmos. The more he understood, the more he realized how much remained unseen, unmeasured, and mysterious. Each discovery was not a conclusion, but an invitation, a soft nudge toward further reflection, deeper inquiry, and quieter meditation. The universe, infinite and intricate, revealed itself slowly, one careful observation at a time, and Newton had learned the gentle patience necessary to listen, to imagine, and to understand. In the orchard of his youth, in the classrooms of Cambridge, in candlelit nights filled with sketches and calculations, Isaac had cultivated a profound sensitivity to the rhythms of the world. He understood that forces, though invisible, are everywhere, guiding motion, shaping tides, and tracing the arcs of celestial bodies. Gravity was no longer a curiosity. It was a quiet law of connection, a tender melody that echoed across earth and sky. And in perceiving it, Newton glimpsed a larger truth, that the universe, however vast, follows patterns that can be known, measured, and revered. Even as his mind reached outward toward the cosmos, he remained intimately connected to the familiar world around him. Apples, streams, shadows, and stones were not mere objects. They were soft messengers of the invisible forces guiding all things. His attention to these details, patient and deliberate, allowed him to uncover principles that were as beautiful as they were enduring. Each observation, each calculation, each quiet reflection contributed to the emerging understanding that would one day shape humanity's view of the world. And yet, there was a gentle mystery that remained. For all the patterns he had traced, for all the principles he had begun to uncover, the universe still held secrets too vast for any one mind to encompass. Newton felt this not as frustration, but as a quiet invitation. Each insight was a step along a path that stretched infinitely, and each discovery hinted at further wonders waiting to be understood. The rhythm of learning, the soft unfolding of curiosity into knowledge, was a journey without end, and he embraced it with the serene patience that had guided him since the apple first fell from the tree. As night settled over Cambridge, stars glittering softly in the velvet sky, Isaac Newton leaned back from his desk and breathed deeply. The orchard, the classroom, the candlelit corners of his chamber, all were part of a seamless continuum, a gentle landscape of learning, reflection, and discovery. And in that quiet attentiveness, the first true murmurs of his genius had matured into the beginnings of universal understanding, ready to blossom into the insights that would define not only his life, but the very laws that govern the motion of the world. And so, as the soft hush of night enveloped the fields and the distant city alike, Newton's journey moved forward, quietly yet inexorably. His mind had learned to trace the invisible, to measure the unmeasurable, to listen to the soft music of the cosmos. The orchard and the university were now bridges between curiosity and insight, observation and law, imagination and revelation. And though the world beyond him would not yet fully comprehend the magnitude of what was taking shape, the seeds of discovery had been firmly planted, ready to grow into the enduring brilliance of a mind destined to change the world. And so, as the night deepened and stars shimmered with a gentle light, the story of Isaac Newton pauses here, resting at the threshold of the discoveries that would forever transform our understanding of motion, gravity, and the universe itself. In the quiet of this chapter, we leave him on the cusp of greatness, listening, observing, and patiently unraveling the delicate harmony of the world. Cambridge awoke slowly in the soft light of dawn, and with it, the quiet stirrings of Isaac Newton's mind began anew. The air was crisp, carrying the subtle scent of dew on grass, the whisper of wind through budding trees, and the faint echo of footsteps across cobblestones. To most, it was a simple morning. To Newton, it was another page in a vast, unfolding story, a gentle invitation to witness the invisible forces that shaped every movement around him. Every leaf trembling in the breeze, every apple falling softly to the ground, every ripple across a sunlit pond seemed to speak in a language that only patience, attention, and quiet reflection could translate. He returned to his chambers with a measured calm, unhurried and deliberate, the way one might approach a familiar melody with the intent to understand each note. Parchment and ink awaited him, but so did the universe itself, its silent patterns stretching outward beyond the walls, beyond the orchards of his youth, beyond even the city of Cambridge. Newton's mind had grown accustomed to this delicate conversation with the cosmos, listening, imagining, and gently tracing the invisible threads that connected every falling stone, every swinging pendulum, every orbiting planet. This was the beginning of a profound awakening. Motion was no longer a simple observation. It was a dialogue. Objects moved not by chance, but according to laws that could be discerned by careful, patient attention. Newton's sketches traced arcs and lines, while his mind measured the unseen pushes and pulls, the quiet forces that tugged at matter in ways both delicate and persistent. Each calculation, each experiment, was a step closer to perceiving the elegant symmetry of the world, a harmony invisible to the casual observer, but palpable to those who had learned to watch, listen, and imagine. Even the simplest objects reveal their secrets when observed closely. A ball rolling down an inclined plane, a pendulum swinging in rhythmic arcs, water flowing in a quiet, measured stream, all whispered truths about force, resistance, and motion. Newton treated each phenomenon with reverent patience, repeating measurements, tracing curves, noting subtleties, and imagining the invisible laws that governed their behavior. The world, he realized, was a tapestry woven of cause and effect, its patterns subtle yet unyielding, its rhythm gentle yet precise. Books and prior knowledge offered soft guidance, but not instruction. The works of Galileo, Kepler, and Descartes were no longer just words on pages. They were invitations to see deeper, to listen more closely, to interpret the murmurs of a universe that was now beginning to speak with a clarity Newton could perceive. The apple of his youth, once a simple curiosity, had become a symbol of inquiry, a bridge between observation and principle. Gravity was no longer an abstraction. It was an intimate, pervasive thread, gently binding all things together, from the smallest stone to the farthest star. As days turned to nights, candlelight flickered across his growing collection of sketches, measurements, and musings. He traced lines that described motion, arcs that described force, and calculations that hinted at universal truths. And yet, there was no rush, no impatience. Insight arrived in gentle waves, soft as the evening breeze, as patient as the turning of seasons, as deliberate as the falling of an apple. Newton learned to embrace the rhythm of understanding, allowing ideas to settle, to resonate, to reveal their subtle patterns in quiet, almost imperceptible ways. Cambridge itself seemed to pulse softly with the same rhythm. The distant tolling of bells, the rustle of leaves in the courtyard, the hushed voices of scholars in shadowed corridors, all became part of the symphony of observation, each note a reminder of the careful attention required to see what others could not. In these quiet, reflective hours, Newton's mind moved fluidly, synthesizing observation, calculation, and imagination into insights that bridged the gap between the visible and the invisible, the known and the yet to be understood. And so, on one soft, tranquil morning, Isaac Newton traced the first outlines of what would become the three laws of motion. Each principle emerged not in sudden revelation, but in patient observation, in repeated experimentation, in the quiet, deliberate unfolding of understanding. Objects in motion continued, objects at rest remained, and forces acted upon them with a gentle consistency. The universe, he realized, was not arbitrary, but harmonious, following patterns as delicate as they were universal, waiting for patient minds to perceive, measure, and describe them. Even as the world moved quietly outside his window, Newton remained immersed in this gentle dance of discovery. Candlelight illuminated sketches of inclined planes, arcs of pendulums, and curves of falling bodies. His mind traced invisible lines connecting apple to ground, moon to tides, earth to orbit. In each measurement, each calculation, each reflection, he sensed the soft pulse of the universe, patient and eternal, guiding him toward truths that would quietly illuminate the understanding of motion for centuries to come. And so, as twilight fell over Cambridge, the young scholar paused, leaning back from his desk, eyes tracing the faint shimmer of stars outside. The universe had begun to reveal itself in whispers, soft and deliberate, patient and intimate. And in the calm attentiveness of Isaac Newton, the first true murmurs of the laws of motion were taking shape, gentle yet enduring, ready to unfold into a brilliance that would change the way humanity sees the world. Evenings in Cambridge carried a soft stillness, a hush that seemed to settle over the city and the countryside alike. The air was cool, scented faintly with the first hints of spring, and the sky, stretching above the university's stone walls, shimmered with stars that twinkled like distant whispers. Isaac Newton, seated at his desk, felt the quiet pulse of the universe as keenly as he felt the weight of his own thoughts. Every movement in the world, from the falling of an apple to the orbit of the moon, hinted at invisible threads, subtle forces that connected all things, and he was learning, with patient attention, to follow them. It was in these gentle hours of observation and reflection that the idea of gravitation began to take shape, not as a loud revelation, but as a soft, persistent understanding. Newton traced the arcs of falling apples, imagining the invisible hand that guided their descent, and then he lifted his thoughts to the moon, orbiting quietly above the earth. How, he wondered, could the same unseen force influence both the small and the immense, the terrestrial and the celestial, the familiar and the distant? It was a question that required patience, imagination, and a delicate reasoning, and he approached it as one might approach a whisper, listening carefully for its meaning. Every experiment, every sketch, every calculation became part of a tender conversation with nature. Pendulums swung in rhythmic arcs, stones rolled down gentle slopes, and waters flowed along the curves of streams. In each motion, Newton perceived echoes of a universal order, a harmony that extended beyond the walls of his chamber, beyond Cambridge, and into the expanse of the cosmos. The falling apple, so ordinary and yet so profound, was no longer merely a curiosity. It had become a symbol of connection, a bridge between observation and principle, between the world below and the heavens above. Books and prior knowledge provided guidance, but not certainty. The observations of Galileo, Kepler, and Descartes offered hints, soft lines pointing toward understanding. But it was Newton's quiet, reflective mind that began to weave these threads into a single, coherent vision. He imagined a force that acted gently yet persistently across space, drawing objects toward one another, binding planets to stars, the moon to Earth, and every particle to its neighbor. Gravitation was not merely a concept. It was a language, a delicate melody that spoke through the arcs of motion, the curvature of orbits, the rise and fall of tides. At night, when Cambridge slept under a blanket of stars, Newton would walk through quiet courtyards, imagining the invisible threads stretching from every object to every other, soft but unyielding, shaping the world with patient consistency. He thought of the moon, circling the earth in silent obedience to these unseen rules, and he imagined the sun, its vast presence guiding the planets along elegant paths. The same force that drew a small apple to the ground, he realized, governed the heavens themselves, a profound symmetry, gentle yet all-encompassing, that connected the familiar with the infinite. Even the rhythms of daily life in Cambridge seemed to echo these principles. The flow of water from taps, the swing of a lantern in a corridor, the gentle arc of a quill across parchment. All were reminders that motion and force were ever-present, subtle, and consistent. Newton's mind traced each movement, noting its path, measuring its effect, and imagining the invisible connections that bound the world together. Observation had become meditation. Measurement had become reflection. And the universe, in its quiet persistence, offered insights to those willing to listen with patience and care. And yet, this understanding was not rigid or hurried. Newton approached each problem with gentle deliberation, allowing patterns to emerge softly, like shadows at dusk or ripples across a pond. Insight did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded gradually, with calm, reflective attention. The apple, the moon, the planets, all spoke a silent language, and he learned to hear it in whispers, to trace its meaning with careful hands and a quiet mind. This was the rhythm of discovery, the tender cadence of insight, where patience and imagination intertwined to reveal truths both delicate and enduring. By the end of these long nights, Newton had begun to see gravitation as a universal principle, a quiet thread connecting all matter, near and far, ordinary and celestial. It was a law that moved softly yet persistently, shaping motion, governing orbits, and tracing the arcs of every falling object. In the hush of candlelight, amid sketches, calculations, and reflections, he began to understand that the universe operated with a harmony both gentle and inexorable, a truth that would quietly reshape humanity's understanding of the world. And so, as dawn approached and the first light kissed the rooftops of Cambridge, Isaac Newton leaned back from his desk, eyes tracing the faint shimmer of stars fading in the sky. The universe had begun to reveal its secrets in whispers, and in the calm attentiveness of his mind, gravitation emerged as both subtle and universal, connecting earth and heavens alike. The young scholar, patient and reflective, had glimpsed the invisible threads that held the cosmos together, and the soft, enduring melody of discovery had begun to play its first notes. The quiet of Cambridge, softened by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant tolling of bells, provided Isaac Newton with the space to think deeply, to observe patiently, and to imagine broadly. Each day, the world offered him lessons in subtlety, the slow arc of a pendulum, the effortless curve of water flowing along a channel, the predictable path of falling apples. These were ordinary moments to many, but to Newton, each contained a soft and persistent whisper of universal law, waiting to be traced, measured, and understood. He approached these moments with the quiet diligence of a mind attuned to harmony. Objects in motion did not wander randomly. They obeyed rules that were precise, gentle, and unyielding. A stone rolled down an incline, tracing an arc that could be measured. A pendulum swung in a perfect rhythm, returning always to its starting point. And above, the moon traced a path around the earth with a silent constancy, as though moved by a force invisible yet intimate, soft yet unrelenting. Each observation was a note in a subtle symphony of motion, and Newton learned to listen, to record, and to interpret its quiet melody. He began to see the connection between these phenomena. The same principles that guided falling apples, he realized, could explain the motion of planets. Force, he understood, was not merely an abstract concept. It was the gentle hand that guided motion, the quiet impulse behind every arc, every curve, every orbit. Objects resisted changes to their motion, and yet, when influenced by an external force, they moved predictably, softly, in harmony with the invisible laws of the universe. The world was orderly, not chaotic, a delicate dance of cause and effect that could be understood through careful observation and thoughtful reflection. Mathematics became his quiet companion, a language through which the invisible could be translated into thought. Equations traced the patterns he observed, capturing the gentle consistency of motion and the subtle pull of gravitation. Each calculation was a soft meditation, a bridge between observation and principle, between what could be seen and what could only be imagined. Newton's hand moved deliberately, tracing lines, measuring arcs, and sketching curves, each stroke a patient exploration of the rhythm that guided all things. And then, with a careful, deliberate mind, the first outlines of his 3 laws of motion began to take form. Objects at rest remained at rest. Objects in motion continued unless acted upon. Simple, gentle truths that revealed the quiet order beneath apparent chaos. The relationship between force, mass, and acceleration became a soft, unfolding insight, illuminating the rules that governed both apples and moons, stones and planets, tides and orbits. Each principle emerged quietly, patiently, like the soft spread of dawn across the horizon, revealing a world at once familiar and profoundly new. Gravitation, too, revealed itself in this gentle reflection. The apple, falling softly to the ground, was no longer an isolated event. It was connected to the moon, the tides, the motion of distant planets. A single invisible force, subtle yet universal, bound all matter together. It was soft in presence, persistent in effect, a quiet melody resonating from the earth to the heavens. Newton's understanding of gravitation was not rushed or forceful. It was patient, reflective, and precise, capturing the intimate connection between the terrestrial and the celestial in gentle, enduring insight. Evenings stretched long, illuminated by candlelight and quiet thought. Newton recorded each observation, each calculation, each reflection, letting the laws emerge naturally from the careful dialogue he maintained with the world. He moved gently between experiment and imagination, theory and observation, allowing the principles to reveal themselves in their own soft rhythm. And in this patience, in this gentle attentiveness, the universe itself seemed to respond, offering clarity where before there had only been mystery, and illuminating patterns that had always existed quietly and persistently around him. By the close of these reflective nights, Isaac Newton had begun to map the unseen forces that govern motion and gravity, weaving them into a framework that was as elegant as it was enduring. The falling apple, the orbiting moon, the swinging pendulum, all were part of a single, harmonious system, a gentle architecture of the cosmos waiting to be understood. And though the world beyond Cambridge would take time to recognize it, the first true glimpses of universal law had emerged, patient, quiet, and infinitely profound. As the stars blinked softly above the city and the first light of dawn touched the university spires, Newton leaned back, eyes tracing the faint shimmer of the heavens. The universe had begun to speak to him in whispers, revealing its invisible patterns, and in the calm attentiveness of his mind, the first murmurs of his enduring genius had coalesced into form. The laws of motion and the gentle pull of gravitation were no longer distant mysteries. They were intimate truths, softly illuminating the rhythm of the world, waiting to unfold fully in the chapters yet to come. The quiet corridors of Cambridge seemed to breathe with the same soft rhythm that Newton's mind had learned to hear. Each day unfolded with gentle precision, as if the universe itself conspired to reveal its secrets to those patient enough to observe. Isaac Newton, immersed in candlelight and reflection, felt the tender pulse of cosmic order everywhere. In the falling of apples, the swing of pendulums, the curve of distant comets. These were not isolated events, he realized, but whispers of a grand design, subtle threads connecting the ordinary and the extraordinary, the familiar earth to the distant heavens. The more Newton observed, the more profound the connections became. Motion, he understood, was not random. It obeyed laws that were consistent, gentle, and universal. An object at rest would remain so unless a force acted upon it. A moving body would continue along its path unless influenced. And the acceleration it experienced depended delicately on the force applied and its own mass. These were not abstract rules, but soft, living principles quietly governing every movement from the smallest stone to the largest planet. Each insight deepened his appreciation of the intimate order underpinning the world. Gravity, too, had begun to reveal its serene, pervasive presence. The apple that once fell in a Lincolnshire orchard now spoke to him of the moon, the tides, and the distant planets. A single invisible force acted quietly, softly, connecting all matter, shaping motion, and weaving a web of influence that stretched from Earth to the stars. Newton imagined this force not as a spectacle or an imposition, but as a subtle harmony, gentle in presence yet relentless in effect, patiently binding the universe into elegant patterns of cause and consequence. Even mundane objects became sources of reflection. Water flowing in a gentle stream, shadows stretching and shrinking across stone, leaves drifting lazily in the wind. All were soft reminders of the unseen principles at work. Newton's experiments were quiet meditations. Weights rolled down inclines, pendulums traced arcs, and stones fell with predictable grace. Each repetition, each careful observation, allowed him to trace the invisible lines that guided motion, revealing a universe ordered not by chance, but by law, soft yet eternal, gentle yet inevitable. Cambridge itself seemed to harmonize with these discoveries. The distant rustle of leaves, the faint echo of footsteps, the soft murmur of a scholar in a neighboring room, all became part of the tapestry Newton was learning to perceive. Observation, calculation, and imagination intertwined seamlessly, like threads in a gentle loom, weaving understanding from the smallest details to the cosmic scale. Newton's mind moved fluidly through this delicate architecture, letting principles emerge naturally, patiently, and with a quiet clarity that would endure far beyond the walls of the university. He began to perceive the broader implications of his insights. The same laws that guided a falling apple could explain the orbits of moons, the motion of planets, and the ebb and flow of tides. Force and mass, motion and acceleration, gravity and distance, all were connected in a harmonious system that extended infinitely outward. Each discovery was not isolated, but part of a greater, coherent framework, a gentle architecture that illuminated the rhythm of the universe and the intimate connections binding all things together. Even as he worked, Newton remained humble before the vastness of what he did not yet understand. For every pattern revealed, countless others remained hidden, delicate threads awaiting patient attention. The universe, he sensed, spoke in whispers, not shouts. Insight required time, observation, reflection, and a quiet willingness to wait. And in this patience, in this deliberate attentiveness, he found not frustration, but serenity, a calm assurance that understanding would emerge if sought with care and respect for the gentle rhythms of nature. By the end of these reflective nights, Newton's early discoveries had matured into a coherent vision of the cosmos. Motion was governed by subtle yet universal laws, and gravity connected every particle, object, and planet in a web of quiet, enduring order. His mind, trained by years of patient observation, careful experimentation, and reflective imagination, had begun to perceive the invisible threads of the universe in ways few had ever imagined. These insights would quietly ripple outward, reshaping humanity's understanding of the world, one gentle realization at a time. And so, as night draped its velvet cloak over Cambridge and stars shimmered faintly above, Isaac Newton leaned back from his desk, gazing softly at the heavens. The apple, the moon, the pendulum, the flowing stream, they were no longer separate phenomena, but expressions of a single, universal harmony. The universe, patient and enduring, had begun to speak clearly to him, revealing its quiet laws, its tender order, and the profound elegance of its motion. In that calm attentiveness, the young scholar glimpsed the first true harmonies of the cosmos, ready to unfold into the enduring brilliance of his life's work. The nights in Cambridge grew long and still, and in that quietude, Isaac Newton's mind traced the soft arcs of understanding that had begun to emerge over years of patient observation. Candlelight flickered across his desk, illuminating sketches, calculations, and notes, each one a gentle bridge between the visible world and the invisible laws that guided it. Motion, force, and gravity had become more than abstractions. They were living principles, delicate yet persistent, subtle yet universal, quietly shaping the rhythm of the cosmos and the everyday world alike. Newton reflected on the apple that had fallen in his youth, tracing its simple, familiar path back to the unseen force that drew it toward the earth. And then he lifted his thoughts to the moon, circling silently above, and to distant planets orbiting their suns with graceful precision. One law, he realized, governed them all. Gravity, gentle yet unyielding, connected the small and the immense, the terrestrial and the celestial, revealing a harmony that had always existed, patiently awaiting recognition by a mind willing to observe with care. Every observation became a meditation, every experiment a quiet dialogue with nature. Pendulums traced perfect arcs, stones fell with consistent acceleration, and streams of water flowed along predictable paths. Each repetition deepened understanding, confirming the invisible threads that connected all things. Newton's laws were not imposed from without. They emerged softly from patient attention, reflection, and imagination, revealing the intimate architecture of motion in the world around him. The universe, he realized, is a symphony of gentle, orderly principles, waiting for the careful ear to hear its melody. Even in ordinary moments, Newton perceived extraordinary truths. A ball rolling down a gentle slope, a lantern swinging in a corridor, the slow drift of leaves in autumn wind. All were expressions of the same universal principles. Each motion, each response to force, followed the soft, elegant rules he was beginning to articulate. Inertia, the relationship between force, mass, and acceleration, and the universal pull of gravity. These principles illuminated the invisible connections linking earth and sky, stone and star, near and far. Cambridge offered him solitude, but also the quiet energy of a community of learning. Though few could follow the depth of his insights, the city itself seemed to harmonize with his contemplations. The rustle of leaves, the distant echo of a bell, the soft footsteps of scholars moving along shadowed corridors, all became part of the delicate symphony he was attuned to. Every sensory note, every gentle observation, fed into the tapestry of understanding he wove, linking observation, mathematics, and reflection into a coherent vision of the cosmos. And so, Newton began to formalize his understanding into statements of law, gentle yet precise, universal yet intimate. Objects at rest remained at rest. Objects in motion continued unless acted upon by an external force. The acceleration of an object depended delicately on the force applied and its mass. And the force of gravity extended across space, connecting all matter in a tender but unyielding embrace. These were not hurried conclusions, but the patient flowering of years of observation, experimentation, and reflection. Each law emerged softly, like dawn spreading across a quiet landscape, illuminating what had long been present but unseen. With these principles, the world itself seemed to transform. Motion and force were no longer mysterious, random, or chaotic. They were gentle, predictable, and universal. The apple, the pendulum, the moon, the distant planets, all were expressions of the same tender order. Newton's insight bridged the everyday and the infinite, revealing a cosmos that was elegant, harmonious, and deeply interconnected. It was a vision that would endure, quietly reshaping humanity's understanding of the world and our place within it. As night deepened over Cambridge, stars blinking softly above, Isaac Newton paused, leaning back from his desk. The universe had begun to speak with clarity, revealing patterns that were subtle, persistent, and beautiful. In the calm attentiveness of his mind, the first true harmonies of motion and gravitation had crystallized, ready to guide not only his own understanding, but the understanding of generations yet to come. The gentle rhythm of the cosmos, once hidden, now resonated quietly with those patient enough to listen. And so, in this hush of discovery, we leave Newton at the culmination of his early insights, ready to step forward into the broader, unfolding journey of his genius. The apple has fallen, the pendulum swings, and the stars trace their silent arcs, all whispering the universal laws he has begun to uncover. The world, once veiled in mystery, now hums with gentle order, waiting for the next soft, deliberate steps in the journey of understanding. Chapter 3. The quiet of Cambridge had nurtured a mind attuned to the whispers of the universe, and now, Isaac Newton's ideas began to stir beyond the stone walls of the university. The candlelight of his chamber had revealed the gentle laws of motion and the subtle pull of gravity, but the world beyond, vast and distant, was only just beginning to glimpse the soft clarity of his insight. Even in the hushed corners of libraries, in the muted conversations of scholars, and the careful notes sent across Europe, Newton's quiet genius began to ripple outward, like soft waves spreading across a still pond. Each law he articulated, each principle he traced with patient attention, carried a profound simplicity that belied its transformative power. Objects remained at rest or continued in motion unless influenced. Acceleration responded to force and mass, and gravitation reached across the heavens, tenderly binding all matter together. To those who observed closely, these were more than rules. They were keys to understanding the order and rhythm of the world. And as these keys traveled beyond Cambridge, the universe itself seemed to offer its secrets more openly to those willing to listen. The spread of Newton's ideas was not sudden or boisterous. It moved softly, carried in quiet manuscripts, thoughtful letters, and careful lectures. Scholars in distant towns and cities received his writings with a mixture of awe and curiosity, feeling the subtle harmony in his work, the gentle elegance of principles that explained both the simplest motions and the grandest celestial paths. The language of mathematics became a bridge, a gentle translator of invisible laws, allowing others to perceive the patterns Newton had patiently traced, connecting earth and sky in tender, enduring insight. Even ordinary phenomena were suddenly seen in a new light. The swinging of a pendulum, the fall of an apple, the drift of tides, and the orbit of planets, all were illuminated by the soft glow of understanding. Newton's vision invited careful attention, patient observation, and reflective thought. It whispered to the observer, "Look closely, and the world's hidden order will reveal itself." Each principle was not a mere abstraction, but a delicate truth, waiting for attentive minds to discover its quiet resonance. In the scholarly salons of Europe, among the careful hum of conversation and the soft rustle of paper, Newton's ideas began to take root. Philosophers, mathematicians, and astronomers felt the gentle power of his insight, recognizing that these laws could transform understanding not only of motion and gravity, but of the cosmos itself. They saw that the universe was no longer a collection of random events, but a harmonious system, tender yet precise, subtle yet universal. And so, quietly, patiently, his genius began to reshape the way humanity perceived its place in the natural world. Newton himself continued his work with the same gentle attentiveness that had guided him since the orchard and the candlelit chamber. He refined calculations, traced trajectories, and explored implications, always patient, always reflective. Each observation reinforced the delicate patterns he had uncovered. Each experiment deepened his appreciation for the invisible laws governing all things. And though the world beyond Cambridge had begun to feel the ripple of his influence, he remained quietly focused, listening closely to the whispers of the universe and recording its subtle, enduring melodies. Even the ordinary world seemed transformed under this lens. A stone rolling down a hill, the rise and fall of tides, shadows shifting with the sun. These became expressions of principles that were now understood with clarity. Newton's laws illuminated connections that had always existed but had gone unnoticed, revealing a gentle, harmonious order. And in this realization, the human mind glimpsed a quiet, comforting truth, that the universe is patient, consistent, and comprehensible, waiting for those who observe with care and reflection to perceive its tender rhythm. As dawn approached over Cambridge, the first rays of sunlight kissed the spires and courtyards with a soft glow. Newton paused in his chamber, eyes tracing the horizon, and felt the subtle resonance of his work echo through the universe. The apple, the pendulum, the moon, the distant stars, all were now part of a tender, coherent vision, a quiet architecture of motion and gravitation that extended beyond his immediate sight. The world had begun to respond, in whispers, to the gentle waves of insight he had set in motion. And so, as night followed day, and day followed night, the ideas that had grown quietly within a young scholar's mind began to ripple across Europe. They traveled not with force or urgency, but with a soft persistence, carried in attentive observation, careful calculation, and reflective thought. The universe, once perceived as mysterious and unpredictable, was now seen as orderly, harmonious, and deeply interconnected. And in the hush of this understanding, Newton's genius continued to extend softly, serenely, leaving a quiet, enduring mark on the human imagination. The soft corridors of Europe's libraries and lecture halls now carried whispers of Isaac Newton's discoveries, gentle echoes that moved with patience and precision. Scholars, mathematicians, and astronomers felt the quiet weight of his ideas, sensing the subtle harmony that connected motion, force, and gravitation. The principles he had uncovered were at once simple and profound, delicate yet unyielding, like a quiet melody underlying the clamor of everyday life. They invited reflection, careful observation, and the soft wonder of those willing to pause and listen. Newton's laws offered more than explanation. They offered perspective. The movements of planets, the fall of an apple, and the rise of tides could now be understood as part of a coherent, harmonious system. The universe, once a realm of mystery and unpredictable events, revealed itself as orderly and comprehensible. Scholars began to trace these invisible threads in their own observations, realizing that the cosmos had always moved according to tender, precise rules, patiently waiting to be discerned by attentive minds. Each law was a quiet key, unlocking understanding, not with force, but with elegance, insight, and grace. The philosophical implications were profound, yet expressed gently. Newton's work suggested that nature was not chaotic or whimsical. It was patient, consistent, and intelligible. For the human mind, this was a comforting revelation. The world, with all its complexity, could be perceived, measured, and respected. And yet, it also revealed the vastness of what remained unknown. Newton's quiet laws illuminated motion and gravity, but the universe extended infinitely beyond, carrying secrets that would continue to unfold softly and patiently to those who observed with care. In practical terms, Newton's principles began to ripple through scientific experimentation and innovation. Engineers, astronomers, and navigators found that understanding force, acceleration, and gravity provided tools for predicting motion, charting courses, and designing instruments with gentle precision. The ordinary world, pendulums, falling stones, flowing water, now spoke a language of exactitude and predictability. And while the human ear might not hear it, those attuned to the rhythm of inquiry began to perceive the soft, enduring patterns shaping their own endeavors, echoing the quiet genius of Cambridge's scholar. Even in distant fields of thought, Newton's influence blossomed subtly, softly. Philosophers pondered the orderly elegance of a universe. Poets, though less constrained by numbers and calculations, sensed the quiet harmony of motion and gravitation in the rhythms of stars, the cycles of tides, and the steady arc of day into night. The world seemed less arbitrary, more coherent, and profoundly interconnected. Motion was no longer merely movement. It was a conversation with invisible law, a gentle dialogue between observer and universe, soft yet enduring, whispering across centuries and geographies. Newton himself continued his quiet work, not seeking fame or applause, but attending to the universe with careful observation and reflective patience. Each experiment, each calculation, each thought was a gentle meditation, a soft unfolding of understanding. And as his ideas traveled farther from Cambridge, he observed, with quiet satisfaction, the way the principles he had traced so delicately began to inform the thinking of others, not with forceful insistence, but with gentle, patient clarity. The universe, once veiled in mystery, now revealed itself to attentive minds, softly, steadily, and with enduring grace. Even ordinary events took on new meaning. The motion of ships across the ocean, the orbit of planets above, the rise of tides, and the flight of projectiles, all could now be understood as expressions of the same gentle, universal laws. These observations were no longer fragmented or mysterious. They were part of a coherent, elegant system, a delicate architecture connecting earth to sky, stone to star, and the human mind to the vast, unseen rhythms of the cosmos. Newton's quiet genius had provided a lens, soft yet precise, through which humanity could perceive the order underlying all things. As twilight fell over Europe, soft and reflective, the ripple of Newton's insights continued to expand, touching distant observatories, quiet study rooms, and attentive minds. Candlelight illuminated sketches, manuscripts, and calculations that carried his gentle wisdom far beyond Cambridge. The principles of motion and gravity, once confined to the quiet contemplation of a single scholar, now moved through the world with calm persistence, shaping thought, observation, and discovery in ways subtle and enduring. And so, as night deepened and stars blinked softly above, humanity began to glimpse the tender architecture of the universe. Newton's laws whispered across time and space, soft yet firm, inviting those willing to listen to perceive a cosmos of order, elegance, and connection. And in the quiet attentiveness of scholars, poets, navigators, and thinkers alike, the gentle genius of Isaac Newton began to ripple outward, leaving a legacy that would endure, softly yet profoundly, across the centuries. Even in quiet study rooms across Europe, Newton's ideas began to stir both admiration and contemplation. Scholars who received copies of his manuscripts approached them with soft reverence, tracing his calculations with patient care, feeling the gentle elegance that linked falling apples to orbiting moons. Yet, as with all profound insight, his work inspired not only awe but thoughtful debate. Letters traveled slowly along cobblestone streets and over distant seas, carrying questions, clarifications, and reflections that were soft in tone but deep in meaning. Newton welcomed correspondence as a quiet dialogue with the world. Each letter, each question, each exchange was an opportunity to listen, to refine, and to clarify the delicate truths he had uncovered. Across the miles, minds attuned to observation and reason began to engage with the principles of motion and gravitation, confirming, challenging, and extending them. The universe, once a silent and distant presence, was now being perceived collectively through the patient, deliberate minds of those who listened with care. In these exchanges, subtle tensions and inquiries emerged. Some scholars wondered if the same invisible force that guided apples could truly govern the heavens. Others questioned the mathematical frameworks, seeking clarity and reassurance. And yet, in each careful debate, in each respectful challenge, the quiet power of Newton's reasoning shone through. His responses were measured, reflective, and patient, always emphasizing observation, calculation, and the gentle unfolding of understanding over haste or assertion. Through this delicate network of correspondence, Newton's influence began to expand in measured, persistent waves. Astronomers in distant observatories began to apply his principles to the motion of planets and moons, tracing orbits with newfound precision. Engineers and mathematicians found that understanding force, acceleration, and gravity could illuminate practical tasks, from constructing precise instruments to charting the courses of ships. Even philosophers, contemplative and reflective, sensed the soft power of his vision, a universe governed by order, consistency, and harmony, waiting patiently for minds willing to perceive its tender patterns. Yet recognition came slowly, in keeping with the gentle rhythm that had always marked Newton's approach. His ideas were profound, delicate in their precision, and required careful attention. They could not be grasped hastily or superficially. Only the patient, attentive mind could fully perceive their elegance. In this quiet maturation, his work began to take root, subtly but inexorably, across the scholarly world. The gentle architecture of motion and gravity he had traced was now extending its influence, softly reshaping the perception of the universe and humanity's place within it. Amid this quiet recognition, Newton continued his own reflective work. Candlelight illuminated his desk as he refined experiments, recalculated arcs, and traced trajectories, always listening to the gentle language of nature. His attention to detail remained tender and deliberate, each observation a soft meditation on the rhythm and harmony that governed the world. In his careful measurements and subtle reasoning, he reaffirmed the universality of the laws he had uncovered, finding calm certainty in the order and beauty of motion and gravitation. The impact of this growing recognition extended beyond academic circles. Navigators charting distant seas, astronomers mapping the heavens, and inventors imagining new devices all began to feel the quiet resonance of Newton's principles. The soft pull of gravity, the persistence of motion, and the subtle interplay of force and mass were no longer abstractions. They had become a lens through which the world could be understood with clarity, patience, and awe. And in this gentle unfolding, the reach of Newton's genius extended quietly but steadily, touching the practical, philosophical, and poetic imagination of those attuned to the universe. As evening fell over Europe, the flickering light of candles illuminated maps, manuscripts, and calculations that bore the influence of Cambridge's quiet scholar. His ideas traveled across towns and countries, whispered in lecture halls, traced on parchment, and shared in reflective letters. The ripple of his genius moved not with force, but with patient persistence, soft yet enduring, shaping understanding, observation, and imagination in ways both subtle and profound. And so, as the night deepened and stars shimmered softly above, Newton's work began to be acknowledged not only for its insight, but for its gentle, enduring elegance. The world was slowly learning to see the cosmos not as chaotic or arbitrary, but as a realm of order, harmony, and connection. The quiet influence of one attentive mind, nurtured in candlelight and reflection, had begun to ripple across continents, reshaping the way humanity perceived motion, force, and the delicate threads that bind the universe together. The quiet of Europe had grown accustomed to the soft rhythm of Newton's discoveries, yet the reach of his insight continued to expand, touching minds far beyond Cambridge, far beyond his own time. The laws of motion and the gentle pull of gravitation had moved from parchment to observatories, from scholarly letters to lectures and reflective discussion, gradually shaping the way humanity perceived the world. These principles, tender in their clarity yet profound in consequence, offered a lens through which the universe could be understood as a harmonious, orderly whole. Even centuries later, the echo of his genius remains. The apple falling in Lincolnshire, once an ordinary event, is now immortalized as a symbol of discovery, a quiet spark that illuminated the laws guiding both the familiar and the infinite. The pendulum's swing, the trajectory of planets, the rise and fall of tides, all bear the imprint of his gentle attentiveness, a testament to a mind that listened patiently to the whispers of nature and translated them into enduring understanding. Newton's work continues to remind us that observation, reflection, and care can reveal truths both profound and elegantly simple. His influence was not only scientific but philosophical. For the first time, humanity could perceive the universe as a coherent system, governed by principles that were soft yet persistent, subtle yet universal. The cosmos, once seen as unpredictable and capricious, was revealed to follow patterns that could be understood with patience, thought, and attention. This revelation reshaped human perception, offering a gentle reassurance. The world is not chaos, but a careful architecture of motion and law, waiting for those who are willing to observe, listen, and reflect. Practical innovation flowed from these discoveries as well. Navigators could chart courses with new confidence. Engineers could design machines with predictable motion, and astronomers could trace celestial paths with precision that had once seemed unattainable. Knowledge became a quiet tool of empowerment, allowing humanity to engage with the universe in ways once impossible, not through force, but through understanding. The laws Newton articulated had opened a door to comprehension, inviting us to step softly into the rhythm of the cosmos. Even today, in the hush of laboratories, lecture halls, and quiet observatories, his influence remains palpable. Scholars, students, and seekers of understanding trace the arcs of planets, the paths of projectiles, and the movement of tides, guided by principles first revealed in the candlelit stillness of Cambridge. Every calculation, every careful observation, every reflective thought is a continuation of a gentle dialogue that began centuries ago, a conversation between humanity and the universe, soft yet enduring, subtle yet profoundly transformative. Newton's legacy extends beyond formulas and experiments. It resides in the patient attention he brought to the world. He teaches us that discovery is a gentle process, a careful unfolding of understanding rather than a forceful conquest. By observing, reflecting, and attending with care, we participate in the quiet architecture of the cosmos, perceiving connections invisible to those who hurry or overlook. His work reminds us that insight often comes softly, emerging gradually from observation and thought, and that the universe responds to those willing to listen. In the stillness of the night, as stars shimmer faintly above, one can imagine Newton leaning back in his chamber, tracing the paths of planets with his mind's eye, feeling the tender pull of gravity and the soft harmony of motion. The world he illuminated is vast, complex, and profoundly interconnected, yet it moves with a calm order, patiently awaiting comprehension. His genius lies not only in what he discovered, but in the way he taught humanity to perceive the universe, with attentiveness, patience, and respect for its quiet rhythms. The apple, the pendulum, the orbiting moon, and the flowing streams are now eternal companions in this gentle narrative. They remind us that even ordinary moments contain profound truths, that careful attention reveals hidden patterns, and that the universe, while vast and silent, can be understood through patience and reflection. Newton's laws continue to shape thought, guide discovery, and inspire reflection, softly guiding humanity toward a deeper, more intimate understanding of the cosmos. And so, as night draped its velvet cloak over Cambridge, across Europe, and into the hearts of thinkers everywhere, the enduring impact of Newton's gentle genius could be felt. The soft melody of motion and gravitation continues to ripple through time, quietly illuminating the harmony of the world and the cosmos. From the falling apple to the distant stars, from the laboratory to the observatory, humanity still listens, still learns, and still follows the tender, enduring path he first traced. And in this calm reflection, we leave Newton, not merely as a figure of history, but as a quiet guide whose insight continues to shape the way we perceive motion, gravity, and the elegant rhythm of the universe. The world, patient and enduring, still whispers its secrets to those who are willing to listen. And in that gentle understanding, Newton's legacy endures, softly, profoundly, and forever.